Welcome to the Unearthed Man podcast, the journey to becoming a conscious man, hosted by Milva. Hey all, Milva here, and welcome to episode 16 of the Unearthed Man podcast. Like always, for all those people who are supporting me and listening in on the podcast, I really appreciate that and send you much love. For all those people who have dropped in and out or listened to episodes here or there, or if this is your first episode, then definitely welcome aboard to the Unearthed Man podcast. If you're looking to find me outside the podcast, then you can find me under Instagram, on LinkedIn, and also on Facebook. You could just search for the Unearthed Man. The guest I have on today, when I first set up the podcast, I put out my list of people who had supported me along the journey, people I'd done either been on the journey with or had coached me on the journey, and I'd looked at some of those and had a nice level of confidence that they would come on. And then I set some goals about some other men who I see as being large in the global scheme of things. And again, as we're working through, either do we idolize or do we get inspiration from different people, there were certainly some people out there that I saw, in the terms of big fish, as being some big fish to hook to get in on the podcast. So my guest today is one of those. He is an amazing man. He has partnerships that he's got set up with the likes of Conscious Man Brotherhood, with the Sacred Sons. He does a lot of work now with a company based in Guatemala, which is Keith's Cacao. And I just really wanted to look at him as being a man that I would love to get on. I've had interactions with him. He is a absolutely beautiful, gentle, kind, loving man. And having all those traits and knowing the global reach that he has out there, for me, there was part of the imposter syndrome, which is, would he actually want to jump on my, what I call very humble podcast? As soon as I reached out to him, he was like, I'm in. Yes, I would love to do that. And I would love to be part of your podcast and support you on your journey. And for me, that was just filled my heart. And it's an indication of how beautiful this man is. So without going into that any further, I'm just now going to hand over to the interview. And so let's just get on with episode 16 of the Unearthed Man podcast. My guest today has the saying of, let your vibe be a product of your heart and not your environment. He's a leader in modern masculinity and sexual energy mastery. He's also a cacao and breathwork ceremonialist. Probably didn't quite say that right, but a ceremonialist. So welcome to the Unearthed Man podcast, Brenden, Durell, or others know him as Bam. Hey, Bam, how are you, man?
Doing good, Steve. How's it going over there? And where are you, in Melbourne?
Yep, based in Melbourne. Yeah, so it's we're in the middle of winter here, so it's a bit fresh, but we're starting to move up into spring. So it's nice over here. Although, as we're doing this interview, we're in the middle of this wonderful lockdown. So it's changed things a bit for us. We're I'm not sure you're aware, but they have us in curfew, so we can't go out. We're locked down from 8 p.m. until 5 a.m. Only one person can go to a supermarket. You can't travel more than 5 kilometers away from your primary address. So effectively, we're reasonably housebound. So
wow, that's intense, man. Yeah, I'm currently in Mexico, but I stayed pretty much for 3 months in Guatemala on a place called Lake Atchilon. And it was like that as well. From Friday, 5 p.m. until Monday morning at 5 a.m., it was complete house lockdown. You couldn't leave, go anywhere.
Oh, wow.
It was like that for pretty much the whole 3 months.
Yeah, man, that's crazy. So let's talk about coping mechanisms on the back of that. I mean, to be there, were you on your own there effectively for 3 months?
Yeah, I was by myself. I went down there. I was invited to go down. There's a really amazing cacao brand called Keith's Cacao, which it's one of the best in my opinion, based on the whole process that they do. But they invited me down for their week-long cacao retreat to come lead a breath work and cacao ceremony for their attendees.
Yep.
And I was only meant to be there for about 10 days. And then it was the beginning of March, and then this all just happened. And then I was like, it's not a bad place to stay. So I just decided just to stay, and I got a longer term rental. But yeah, it was just that simple. But I was alone, man. I didn't know anybody else there physically. The people who I knew, I'd known them for maybe like 2 weeks before I got there.
Okay.
So it was pretty foreign, man.
So what were some of the things that you put into place? So, some men out there, we're in lockdown now, but there's also men who are living on their own or go through levels of loneliness, or being isolated. So for those guys out there, what do you do, or what were some of the things that you put into place to overcome that loneliness or that isolation?
Yeah, man, I really honed in on keeping normality in my life, however that looked. And for me, it looked like I needed to sweat every day, like at least 15 minutes of some kind of sweat,
Okay.
whether it be jumping rope, just laying in the sun, doing something. It doesn't even have to be working out. That was something big to me, moving my body. Another thing was keeping like the same kind of friends in my circle, like the ones that I like your other interviewees, like Seth, Sam, guys like that,
Yeah.
Preston, keeping them in my daily life, if not my weekly life, just to be able to like message them, text them, voice note them, because that keeps me in a level of normality. And even though it's not physical, it's still something that's supporting me and feeling some kind of vibration that feels normal to me. So that, and I was also on a, like now, like I never set my alarm clock unless I have to like actually do something early.
Okay.
But during lockdown, even though I didn't have anywhere to go, I would actually set my alarm clock at like 5:30 in the morning. So I had some kind of structure to my days. So doing things like that kept me sane. It was all about coping. It was all about coping.
Yeah, yeah. Because a lot of the guys I'm in some, Facebook groups, everything else, which is men's only groups. But these are guys who really struggle a lot. How do I get out of bed? I've got no motivation. So I think some of those key points are pretty key. If you haven't got a job, or you've lost your job, or you're not sure what's next, set the routine, maintain the routine. Work through that. Connect with different people out there, and that's super powerful to actually help you get through whatever lows that I feel that people might be actually going through. So yeah, good advice. I love that, man.
Absolutely.
So one of the things that I wanted to chat to you about, for those who don't know about Bam, he played professional baseball for a while and toured around playing baseball, and then he sort of moved out of that into just learning a lot more about ancient traditions and ancient ways of how we are as humans. So, Bam, a couple of things. How many countries have you had this wonderful opportunity to travel to? I think it's substantial from what I understand.
I've been, it's between 42 and 45 countries that I walked on and I explored, and I lived in about 4 for longer than a couple months at a time. And so I'm up to over a year.
Nice, beautiful. And so part of that is, as I said, you've gone from, this professional sporting life to, now getting out and just traveling. What's in behind, all this traveling that you're actually doing? What are you out there? Is there a discovery? What's that looking like for you, being able to go to all these beautiful places?
Yeah, it's always been a sense of curiosity. As a kid, I always had a fascination with the Indiana Jones saga, just like constantly just waking up, going on adventures and doing cool shit and living to tell about it. Like that was always like in my blood, in my DNA as a kid. So when I got the opportunity, as you mentioned, I played professional baseball. That led to me playing international baseball, which led to me having my flights paid for, my accommodation paid for, a lot of things paid for. So I got to see different places based on baseball. And then I got a taste of that. I was like, how can I actually keep doing this without playing baseball? Because at this point, I was already playing baseball consistently for about 22 years of my life, since childhood all the way up to that point. Yep. So I was getting kind of burnt out a bit. But I wanted to keep traveling. And I was praying for ways that I can keep doing that without having to, let's say, enter the real world of work and things, which I would do. I actually tried many times. I applied for like over 20, 25 jobs Like in off seasons for baseball, I couldn't get things. I
Mm.
was either overqualified because of uni degrees or I didn't have enough experience. Like all these things, the universe was pointing me just to be like, hey, do your own thing. Like you don't need this. So yeah, it's always been like a sense of wonder in me to keep going to these places. And there wasn't like one thing that was like, bam, you're in this realm now of supporting people and living this type of lifestyle. It was more of a culmination of just, let's say, as my friend calls it, following the breadcrumbs.
Yeah. Okay. So let's have a look at that now. So in relation to what you're doing, and we talked a bit about the bio being, the leader in modern masculinity and sexual energy mastery. So, you go around now and you offer these services to, different places, and you run different programs and everything else. So what does that look like for you, Bam, in relation to, the work you're actually doing and how you've gone to continue to, build into that level of mastery?
Yeah, man. This so the work that I do with sexual energy mastery, it's all based in white tantric principles. So it's about self-cultivation. It's about working with your primordial force, your energy, the spark of life. Um, it's not sexualized. It's literally the creation mechanism that made us that type of energy. Because we live in a planet, what it's about 7.5 billion people,
Yep.
and literally every single person is a product of sexual energy to be here, but it's been taboo. So my thing is like, wow, so this energy is more than just sex. This energy is actually about life and it gives life. So how can I maximize that, my experience? And with that in relation to my travels, it's like I'm making love to the earth. That's how I see it. Like every exotic place I go to, every new destination, I'm like, how can she woo me today? How can I woo her? So that's been like my motivation with a lot of my travels. It's literally this tantric pleasure based thing.
Yeah, and I think that's, touching on where a lot of men find themselves today is that sexual energy is actually sexualized, so they're getting caught in, you know, chasing the woman or chasing the one night stand, or, whether it now be, the major disease I think we have is pornography across the globe. And I think it's because, in my view, innate, we have this sexual energy, but we've never been taught the good and the bad, or how to actually, not that there's any good or bad, but how to actually properly channel that. So it's actually serving us, and it's serving us from a value and a purpose point of view, rather than actually being a disservice to us. Your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything just as men, because you're in the work too with rites of passage and you've been through your own initiations. You also have children. So this is a thing that we haven't been taught. Like there's been no physical evidence of in our culture of masculinity, of like a rites of passage with women physically, no matter how it's received in their family. Once they start bleeding the first time for their moon, that's like a rites of passage. Like, oh, now we're in womanhood. We have this. As men, we really don't have that. Like going through puberty, it is, but it's still not. It's just a change of the body. Um, in the way of like in our culture, we go to bars, our first car, first time we have sex. That's usually like our rites of passage of our masculinity. And in reality, it's not backed by nothing. And the way our culture is set up, even like as adults, as men, it's a lot of men don't know that there's a difference between, let's say, ejaculation and orgasm. Just simple things like that. It's because we've been taught that ejaculation is an orgasm, and it's actually not. They're actually very different when it comes to different things in the realm of sexuality. So we've been programmed to keep releasing physically and to seek the physical pleasure more than the internal pleasure.
Yeah. And I love that you've touched on that, because I found that out a while ago, about the fact that you could have an orgasm without ejaculation, or you could just ejaculate and there's no orgasm that comes with it. And it's interesting when you start to go down that space. And since I kicked into the work, in fact, funny enough, the weekend before I kicked into work, I actually made a choice to stop masturbating, and and have not since around November last year. And it's interesting now, because I actually find, which is all the things, I'm actually now in control of my energy, and I'm not just throwing energy away. And if you see, and I think the other thing too is that we often see energy as something that's infinite, but in some cases it's actually finite. So I get to choose. If I've just got a finite level of an energy ball I've actually got, I can choose what I decide to do that. I could, masturbate and ejaculate and throw it off on a rock somewhere. Or I could rechannel that back into, how I'm actually operating on a day basis, or how I'm actually making that to be the best person I am. Am I fully committing into the meetings I'm in? Am I fully committing into the people that are around me? And how am I rechanneling that as we go through? And I think, yes, that's just not taught, and it's just not out there for men to understand and learn that.
Absolutely. And for me, it's being in this work, because I did the whole no-fap thing for a while. And then I realized, because of my teachers and my mentors, they were like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm not masturbating. And they were like, why? And I said, because of A, B, and C, listed all the reasons why. And then they go, okay. So the deeper I got into the work, I realized that masturbation is actually healthy for us. However, in the practice that I teach and that I'm taught, we call it edging. So it's still masturbating, but we just don't ejaculate at the end. So it's almost like we're priming ourselves for that energy. So let's say there's a scale of 1 to 10. And let's say 0 is soft, flaccid penis. 10 is you're about to ejaculate, super rock hard. In ancient traditions based in Daoism and other cultures, you kind of want to sit between, let's say, an arousal. Let's say we're talking arousal energy in a sexual experience, between like a 6 and a 7. That's like a safe area. And we've been taught to go 0 to 100, 0 to 10 in our practices. So with the masturbation practice that I do, that I teach, it's called edging. And it's like we get to a certain point, we get to a 6 or 7. And once we feel that arousal, we feel that energy running through our backs and everything like that, that's when we stop masturbating, and then we circulate that energy around our body. So it's like taking the whole practice to a whole new level. And that's how we regenerate it. So there's a lot of misconception. I know it's big in Australia, no fap, no fap. It's great. It's beneficial for a lot of dudes if they're just, let's say, addicted to porn.
Yep.
But long term, it's not that healthy, because this also too, we look at men over 45, prostate cancer is one of the biggest killers in men. Yes. It's because we don't do enough to nurture our prostate, that area down there, our lower chakras. So masturbation is actually a good thing to keep the flow going. And let's say for me, based on different methods, if I'm in a ejaculation phase, I'll ejaculate like once every 7 days, once every 8 days, whether I'm in a relationship or I'm not.
Okay.
Because let's say our body physically needs time to regenerate. That's why we have a lot of stigma as men. It's like women been clowning us, let's say, for years, talking like, oh, he ejaculated and he fell asleep right away. Well, he's no use to us, or like the banter that women do for men, the shaming. A big part of that, it's physically. It's because like when a man actually physically ejaculates, he's giving away all of these nutrients that we have in our body. Because think about ejaculation, it's a substance that's meant to create a life.
Yes, that's right.
So we're moving that from our body. So of course we're going to be freaking tired. Yes. So the practice that we do, it's just that we use that energy, but we just don't cut it off. We recycle it. So this is the whole white tantric practices that we do, so we can keep the energy flowing for pretty much everything, like our purpose, like how we sleep, how we show up for our communities, et cetera, et cetera.
Beautiful, man. I love that, because, I learned something even when just doing interviews. There's stuff that I'm actually learning as part of this, and the audience, they're going to jump onto this. I hope that they pick up on this too and actually get some learnings as well. Because you're right, there are so many misconceptions about do it, don't do it, throw it away, don't throw it away, and how all that actually works. So yeah, actually beautiful. I love that. Thanks, man. So you talked a bit about the Taoist tradition, and I know that recently I was part of a session where you did breathwork for us, and thanks, man. That was a really beautiful breathwork session. So can we explore a bit more into that space now, a bit about the breathwork and other links that you have into the Taoist tradition, and how that works. And I'd love to talk to you. I think you also talked about with us the 3 energy sources. I think it was the Jing, the Qi, and the Chen. I think I hopefully got that right. And I love that the mythology and the story that went with that. So I think I'd love to explore into that as well. So, but let's talk a bit about the breath work and the importance of breath work and and what you're doing in that space.
Yeah, intentional breathing is just something that's been around forever. Like we get into a lot of these trends as humans, like, oh my God, this thing called breath work. And it's like motherfucker, humans been breathing since the beginning of time, or we wouldn't be here. So it's like seeing all this stuff. But I like to call it intentional breathing because it's like we're doing it with a purpose.
Yeah.
It's not work, because even when we're not working, we're still breathing. And it's just putting more thought into it, more intention. And breathing is, as we know, it's so important because in the world we live, it's let's say we're talking with our nervous system. We have the autonomic nervous system, we have the sympathetic and parasympathetic. And sympathetic is, simply put, you're in stress response, fight or flight. And parasympathetic is you're chilling. Our world right now, we turn on the TV, look on Instagram, Facebook, our world is living and operating from a sympathetic, a fight or flight state, with everything that's being thrown at us. So breathing is one of our opportunities, one of our tools to bring ourselves back to the parasympathetic, which is relaxation. Because my highest value in my life, and you can say motto, is peace is the ultimate pleasure. I don't care how I get it, but peace is my thing. And breathing is something that allows me to experience pleasure, which then brings me peace.
Yep. Okay. So so I like the fact that you say it's natural and normal, because one of the examples that you gave to us was just look at a baby, 3-6-month-old baby that's just been born. It doesn't have to think how to breathe. It just, and you look at, as you say, you look at where it actually breathes, and its belly just naturally goes up and down and up and down. And, as we go through life, and as you said, as we start to live in the world of sympathetic, all our breathing starts to come up into our chest region, and we start to be really shallow in breath. That actually drives that anxiety and and that fear and what goes with us. And so one of the things that, from visualization, that Bam said was, I don't know whether you want to talk about. Yeah, actually, I'll throw to you. Tell us about the technique of removing the nose and where we should be putting the nose when we're breathing, just as a visualization to help do that. Yeah. Talk me through that one, because I love that as a visual description.
Yeah, and everybody has their own theories and techniques. I use them all. Like, I just take what works for me, and I know what's worked for me the most. It's with my work with Daoist Tantra. It's they work with the area specifically called the lower dantian, and you can picture it's like 1.5 inches below the belly button, below our navel. And right now, when you're listening to this, you can just find that spot, like 1.5 inches below. So what would it be, like an index finger or a pinky? Take a pinky, and that spot right there. It's the Tao revere that spot. They said that's the spot where we breathe in. That's where we get our life force from. We just come in with this sense of well-being. And that's also correlated with our lower chakra system. And not just men, but just humans in general. When we're in a lot of deep state of fear, our lower chakras are super, 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 I could say, blocked. Yeah. There's a lot of crud in there.
Yes.
So the breathing technique that I do, I think about that spot 1.5 inches below my belly button, and I visualize taking my nose off my face, and I put my nose on that spot below my belly. And then when I'm breathing through my nose underneath my belly button, because that then gives me the whole full diaphragm, the whole full expansion, like a baby's belly. Because like a lot of our breaths, we say breathe in through your nose and expand your lungs. It's the nature of it is that our lungs and our nose, they're going to breathe anyway. Like yes. That's just what they do. So I want to add something into the dynamic so I can maximize my lower chakras in the breath. I don't leave them out. So that's why I bring it down. I bring the nose down to below my belly button to really inflate my belly. And then on the exhale, I bring the belly button. I visualize bringing my belly button into my spine. So it doesn't have to be a big contraction, but just like enough, because for me, we have these energy sources down here. And if we can give like a little massage to that area in breath, it's going to, let's say, stoke our fire.
Yes. It's and you're right. Again, I ran a men's program, and I've been just doing little variations of breath work, on every Monday night, just to show them all the different things. And so same, we did that. And so I use that example to them to say, now just grab your nose and stick it down, that 1 inch below your belly button. And there looks on their faces when I'm trying to explain that to them. They go, you want me to do what? But when you actually say, but if you think from a baby's point of view, how naturally the belly just goes up and down and in and out, they don't have to think about it. And it's almost sad to a point where, yes, we have to get to the point where we're doing intentional breathing, because we're trying to remind ourselves of what it was like, when we were a baby, and we just intentionally breathed because that was our life force. That's all we really knew when we were born. We knew we had to breathe as a way of actually surviving. So it just takes us back to that as well.
Absolutely.
And so, and the other thing that it's, can you talk me through the myth, the fable, or the story about the, I think it's basically the three energy sources. I said I think there's the Jing and the Qi, and from the Taoist point of view, about how their intent to give that to human life, and how they intended to, where they could hide it, and everything else. I just love that as a story. Can you relay that to all our listeners as well?
Absolutely. So based in Taoist traditions, and the way I explain it and the way I love to, it's there were three gods, because Taoism isn't really, it's not even a religion. It's more about like a lifestyle. It's like a way of being, because they were so present. All their practices was about being in the moment. That's what it was about. Their life wasn't about setting themselves up for a eternal life after death. It was about heaven can be created right now. So that encompasses all what Taoism is about. That's why their sexual practices was all about creating this beautiful nirvanic life here, not waiting to something else. So Taoism, they say, like, nobody really knows how it was created, like the theories, but they say that it was created from people behind the sun. They came around and they came down, and they were like here, essentially, like these beings that nobody ever saw. And they really wanted to help humanity. They really wanted to help people. They really wanted to love on people. So there's these three gods, and they were like, well, we have these treasures for these people. Like, what should we do with them? Where like, should we just give it to them? And they're like, no, we can't. We have to hide them until they're ready. And one of the gods was like, okay, we'll hide them at the highest mountaintop. Nobody will ever find it there until they're ready. Another guy was like, no, we'll put it in the depths of the ocean. Like, they will never find it there. And the third guy was like, it's too risky. I know where we're going to put it. We're going to hide it inside of them. That's the place that they'll never look, because humans are always looking externally before internally. So we have these three sacred treasures that live within us. And let's say it's all energy, everything's energy. But just to be like linear in a way to break it down, we have, let's say, three sources. We have Jing energy, which is our sexual energy. It's like our lower chakras, Jing, Jing. And then we have our Qi energy, which is our heart energy. We've all heard this, like, oh, his Qi. We hear it in Kung Fu movies and stuff, Qi. So we give out to the world, we share with people. And then we have our Shen energy, which is almost like, think of it like a projecting type of energy. That's how we're going to manifest. That's how we do things. So we have Jing, Qi, Shen. And these are the three treasures, and just coming through them, like circling through them, it is something that enhances your life. And we can do it physically by ways of breath, just by connecting the centers. Like, we have all of these things in our body. We have these treasures, like our kidneys, our liver, all these things in Eastern medicine, they're all part of our fire. Our kidneys are huge as well. So our kidneys are located in our lower chakra areas. Yep. So when we do this breathing, we're passing through all of these ways to incorporate it into this one beautiful state of bliss.
Beautiful. And I just love that, because interestingly, because a lot of the religions, a lot of thoughts can be complicated, but that's just a very simplistic way of putting it. And you're spot on. The amount of externalization that we now do as humans, and we're seeking everything outside of us, all our happiness, all our relationships, everything goes on, is everything external to us. And often we just don't say, can I spend that time in silence just reconnecting to what's actually already within me, and how can I actually find and look internal to find who I am, and the happiness and what that actually looks like. So just reminding us of that very simple thing, that there are 3 treasures that sit within us, that if we connect to them, we have everything we need, is a beautiful practice.
Yes.
So
Absolutely. We forget that. We think that, especially being men and masculinity, it's like we want more, you want something else, we want to keep going. Oh, this new car is nice, but in 2 years when my lease is up, I'm gonna get the newest one, or I'm gonna get the newest phone. It's always something more, something more, something more. And just reminding us in our masculinity that it's not about that. It's now like, if we're gonna seek anything more, it's about more internal peace.
yes. Absolutely. Which gets me onto the other piece, because the interview with your great friend, Sam Lewis, and I know you and him have done a lot of work together. We explored, his concept of being an innerpreneur. Your Instagram tag is Inner Light Warrior. And so there's a connection that you and Sam have in how you see yourselves, and how you see the world of self-development, if you like, and moving forward. So can you talk me through, for you, what does Inner Light Warrior actually mean to you, and and how does that work for you and in your practices as well?
Yeah, it's funny too, because that handle just came up one day. I literally got a voice in my head, so you need to change it to this. It was my name like everybody else, and I was like, ah. And they were like, I heard Inner Light Warriors with an S, like a community, and I was like, nah. Somebody was like, no, Inner Light Warrior, singular. And this is going to represent not just for me, but for a lot of people. And we look at 2020, our biggest thing, it's not physical threats. Like, our ancestors literally faced physical threats almost every day for survival, whether it be animals, whether it be environment, whether it be disease. And 2020, regardless of all the stuff that's happening nowadays, we're still very blessed to be, what's the average lifespan, like around 70s, 80s? I don't know.
Yep, something like that. Yep.
Yeah. And so for me, it's where we're living in our world today. It's about the inner. And it's always been that, but even more so today. Most people, their physical needs are met. There's not mass famine, let's say, on a world scale. Like, there's stuff we've seen in was it Yemen and it's places in Africa where there is poverty and stuff, yes, which could be corrected, but that's a whole nother conversation in itself. But in Western culture, in our ways, it's like most people, like, even at the lowest of the lows, we still can find food somewhere, somehow, with something. So having those needs met, it's like, okay, now we're honestly privileged in a way to be in a state where we can go inward more and work on ourselves without worrying as much about the physical, where our ancestors had to literally worry about the physical, let's say, just as much or more than the internal.
Yes.
When it comes to it. So, but also too, our ancestors were amazing at communing with nature and also communing internally with themselves. They had this beautiful, harmonious relationship, which is what we're trying to get back to.
Yes. And on that, and that's where, as a Western society, we've totally lost touch with the indigenous groups across all the nations. I remember having a conversation with an Australian indigenous guy. We went and did what's called a Yidaki session. So basically the didgeridoo, but it was like a sound healing session with it, which is amazing. And he was speaking to his son about ants. And he said, just connecting with the ants. He said, if you see ants creating a mound around their anthole, he goes, the rain's coming. If you see ants putting white rocks around the covering of the anthole, the summer's coming, the heat's coming, because the white rocks will actually deflect heat away from there. He said, so just follow an ant trail to their hole and actually see what's happening around the hole, and you'll be able to tell exactly what weather's coming, and guaranteed it'll be within days of what's actually happening. That's connection. Like, that's just to be able to get to the, where we think ants are a pain because they come in your kitchen bench, you might want to steal a grain of sugar, right? And we go, damn ants. Like, that's the true connection. And even that, like, we know ants will start to come in because it's getting dry and they need to find water. So they'll come in and find moisture to be able to take back. So rather than getting upset with the ants coming in, it's like, okay, well, what could I do to actually give them some water? or give them another source somewhere else to be able to go and find that, rather than spraying them with morphine and whatever else you're going to put on them to kill these poor things. They're just trying to live and survive. And I feel we just lost that connection with, just what's around us and how nature is talking to us. And I think that's where Sam talks to this correspondence, the second law of the universe around that, as above is below. This everything is corresponding, and we can see what they do, and we can connect it with us. So I just thought that was such a beautiful thing about how he was so connected. And when we did, he's like, how many butterflies can you see? And we're like, can't see many. He goes, 10, 15 years ago, there would have been butterflies everywhere. And we sort of thought three here. And he goes, if you want to see what's happening, there it is. There is just no butterflies around. And he is so, almost, you can feel the pain in him, because he's seeing this loss of nature that's happening just around him in his own beautiful country. And that's because he is so open to it and so connected to what's happening around him. So, these beautiful people, we just dismiss, and say, yeah, we hear you, but, it's not true medicine, and it's not westernized, and it's not science. And I find it amazing how much now we go back to just identifying things that we don't need Western medicine for anymore, because everyone's going back to the East saying, oh, that's actually going to work. It's incredible these days.
Yep. First thing, it's like, based on what you said about the ants, we're actually lucky that ants weren't the size of like small dogs. They would run this shit. They'd run this whole planet. Those little motherfuckers are strong. They're strong, man. And they have a will too that nobody's ever seen before. So first of all, we better stop spraying them before some like mutation makes them get bigger. And they start spraying us. But yeah, last year March, I went through this monumental experience, and it was with Jetty Azuma. I went on his Compass retreat, or Compass Rites of Passage experience. So it's a vision quest, vision fast type of deal, based on some principles from the Lakota tribe in America. And being out there, it's a week-long fast by yourself, and there's nothing. There's no medicines. It's just you, a sleeping bag, and nature. And water was optional. In traditions, you don't do it with water. I chose water in Death Valley. But being out there, I never realized how natural and loud nature is, because there was no other sounds. There was no other people. It was just me and everything else. And the amount of buzzing insects in a desert, buzzing insects, crawly things, lizards, there's mountain lions out there, there's rattlesnakes, there's scorpions, and so on, owls, wild donkeys. And just being out there, I remember, like, I haven't shared it to many people, but I'll share it here. My first experience when I was walking past threshold to go to my fasting spot. It was early in the morning, and I was scared shitless, because everything inside of me was like, what are you doing? To be by yourself, like, bro, you grew up in the city. You grew up in New Jersey, New York City. Like, what are you trying to do going out here to fast without a tent, mind you, too, just a sleeping bag and a pocket knife and a headlamp?
Wow.
What are you doing? So I was just like bawling, crying, because like it wasn't about the food part. I was okay without eating. I've done that before, but it was about being alone, and not just like lonely, but actually alone. Like the nearest dude to me was like a 30-minute walk through the desert. But I remember I felt the fear was in me when I felt that it was nature versus me. Like it was nature and then it was me. By the second day, something just shifted within me after I actually had a stare down with like a lizard, and it was like this funny thing. And he just checked me out for a good 10 minutes, I would say. Just checked me out, looking me up and down, like, who the hell is this and stuff. And it was one of those moments where I was like, that was definitely a spirit. That wasn't just a lizard operating. But then after that moment, like I had this calmness about me saying like, hey, you're not separate from nature. You are part of it. So once I remembered that, my whole fasting experience became this like beautiful rhythmic circadian type of experience where I was like, I'm in alignment with nature. And then the whole experience ended up just going by like a flash. First day lasted like a week. First day was like a week. Last 3 days, it's like one day.
Yeah.
And it's all from perception of being connected to what's out there. because in our Western culture, it's like, oh, we're inside. I'm inside the house now, or I'm gonna go outside to nature. Like, no, we're a part of nature. That's the thing. We forgot that.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, look, I love that. That's so beautiful. Downstairs, when I do my work downstairs, I've got a dining table. We've just got this plant called the devil's ivy, and it grows pretty quickly. But I've actually, same thing. I've sat there and I actually feel like I can watch this beautiful plant grow. And so we used to have indoor plants, and we were horrible about keeping them alive. Like, unfortunately, an indoor plant and us, we're not great friends. But now, since dropping into Sam's space and starting to do this work about, the higher self and the ego and who I am and how I'm connected, like every week, and I'll do it this morning when I go downstairs, all the plants will go outside. They'll all get beautifully watered. They'll get some winter sunshine on them. I actually celebrate the fact that while they're in the house, they're giving us oxygen, they're giving us life. And our plants, they've just started to flourish. They've literally, like, the leaves that were falling down are all starting to stand up straight and tall. It's almost like they're proud to be acknowledged within the house. Now, I know some people will go, that's really woo-woo, right? But I really feel that this plant that's growing is actually like growing and almost saying thank you every day. And, and I've just watched it grow and grow. And it's probably grown 6 inches in a few weeks. It's like literally this thing is just becoming, I think if we stay here too long, it'll probably take over the house. Someone will visit us and it'll just do this one plant in our jungle. But it's just, I'm just really finding that now that I can just sit and just, rather than being stressed about this ego, about the job and the work and, and everything else, I can just watch this plant. And then when someone goes, you're really calm, aren't you worried about these things? I'm like, I could be worried about all this other stuff. My ego would like me to be, but there's such a beautiful plant over there just living its own life and just growing and giving me, connection to life. Then what else is there around? And so it's just, I'm just loving falling into that space now and seeing how that's operating. So that's beautiful.
Yeah, man. And the thing is, like, whoever's listening too, there's people might say that's woo, but there's been studies done over the last several years about this, like many done in schools. Like schools actually had, let's say, one plant A, then they have plant B. Plant A, they would have the kids intentionally say bad things to the plant, like you're ugly. Like, I don't even know why you're here. Your color is off. Things like that. And then the other plant, they would speak beauty into it. Oh my God, your leaves are vast. Your leaves are amazing. Look how you're going to be so big. And they actually saw that the one that gets spoken bad to actually droops a lot more. Willows, like it's like down. This is actual thing. It's an energy. It's an intention behind it. So people might say it's woo-woo, but it's actually not. Like they've been doing these studies for so long.
Yeah.
So long.
Yeah, and the world now of quantum physics, which is great because they're actually now seeing energy and matter and vibration in how everything operates. And so for those who want to see the scientific evidence that everything is just a vibrating energy, then they're actually now proving it scientifically. And it's so all those
like
people,
Dr. Emoto, Dr. Emoto, the Japanese guy.
Yes.
Yeah, his teardrop experiment, that was his life's work. Like he actually took tears from people who were depressed, people who were angry, people who were in bliss and beauty. And he literally put their tears under a microscope and they looked like a beautiful snowflake when somebody was in harmony. When somebody was in anguish, it looked like it was like a destruction field. So the vibration of the tears, the emotion behind it literally altered the structure of the tears. Like Dr. Emoto's work is amazing.
That's just absolutely fascinating. And that's what I love because, I think there's a lot of people who are seen to be, doing the work, and the spiritual people and the light workers, they're almost condemned and put aside. And, you guys are just, not living in the real world and everything else, which is quite funny because I actually feel that, that there is a group actually living in the true real world, and it's everyone else who's created their own false reality to justify a level of egoism or something that sits in there, and that's not being judgmental, but it's just one of those sorts of things that I actually think that's flipped around the other way a little bit.
Yeah, it is. I actually, that reminds me of my experience after the Vision Fast. I've never been a dude to get anxiety ever. Like I've always been blessed with that. I've been able to have an amazing nervous system, always kept calm. After the Vision Fast experience, I was living in Venice, California at the time, and I went straight from the high desert, being by myself for a week, went right into Venice, California. And it was like, if I would have went to Las Vegas, I would have died because it would have been too much stimulation. But being in Venice, I remember I had this overwhelming sense of anxiety. I was like, this isn't natural. I don't belong here. What the fuck am I doing? Like, this was literally like, I had this running through my body. It was actually the first time I experienced what people with anxiety experience. And I was like, people feel this every day. This feels terrible. And I felt that just because of, like, let's say Venice, California life wasn't natural to how we were supposed to live. And that's when I knew that I was like, I need to be more in tune with nature, even if I can cope with city life.
Yes, absolutely. And, that's why, living in Melbourne, it's the concrete jungle, but wherever we can, just trying to actually get out and walk through a park, or, just walk along the Yarra where there's least trees and there's a river flowing and there's life flowing and everything else. Just, trying to find a place where you can have a level of connection, for me, is now super, super important. So I know that there's other stuff we're going to talk about. You're a big cacao man. I see that it's, you see that as a life source. So maybe let's quickly touch on it. You still got some more time for us to continue chatting?
Yeah, man.
Yeah, cool.
We can go a little bit more, man.
Yeah. So cacao. So I see that it's really important to you. Obviously, you went and spent, went down for that week ceremony in Guatemala to chase what you think is the best cacao around. So talk through that, because I know I see a lot of Instagram stories about, just you seeing that as a sacred source almost, and as a life source that you have.
Yeah, cacao. I've been working with it, let's say, for about 5 years. And for all you listening who you're not familiar with cacao, like what we formerly know as chocolate, like whether it be Cadbury or whatever, Hershey's, whatever you have out there, that's chocolate. That's after industrialization. And what I'm speaking about, it's chocolate comes from a tree even before it's processed. And in the form, before it becomes a candy, it's called cocoa, or it's called cacao, depending on what region you're in. And all it is, it's, if you see the tree, it's this beautiful looking pod. It almost looks like something from the movie Aliens from the 80s. It's like this gnarly thing with like shapes on it, and it has these beautiful colors on it. It's one of the most fascinating things I've ever touched. And inside of it, they have cacao fruit. And if you ever ate exotic fruit or you've been to Bali, it's similar to like, what do they call them? Like the rambutans, or
yeah.
it's kind of like consistency similar to that. It's like very creamy. It has like a little pulp. So chocolate's actually a fruit before the beans are actually roasted and sun dried and then put through a process. So in its 100% natural form, because even the cacao that we drink, like let's say people go, oh, I have 100% raw cacao. Technically, I mean, cacao is not raw because there is a small heating process. So it depends on the measurements of what we think of cooked or not cooked is. But generally, it's not like a raw food item, because if it was, let's say even Australia, you wouldn't be able to get cacao from South America because they're not letting raw food products into the country.
Correct.
That's just not happening. But anyway, and it's cacao is a superfood, and it goes back even before the Mayans, even before the Incas and the Aztecas. The earliest recorded that we found thus far has been through a civilization called the Olmecs, and the Olmecs were like big in the whole Mesoamerica. The Olmecs, they were so indigenous and so original that their structures that they found in the Olmec and the Amazon forest and stuff, they actually had African features like nose, eyes, ears. Okay. So there's even more stuff that says like they even came from Africa, this tribe. But they date back to about 5,000 years from today, because they found in excavations, they found clay pots that contain this compound called anandamide. And anandamide is this compound that's found in cacao. It's the thing that when people drink cacao or even eat processed chocolate, it's like, oh, chocolate's an aphrodisiac. It's because of this compound called anandamide. Anandamide scientists refer to it as the bliss molecule. Right. It's like this thing that just brings like this euphoria to our lives, like this happy thing. That's why like when a little chubby kid's eating chocolate, he has a smile on his face. Partly it's because of that, and the other part is because he's eating all that sugar, but he's happy. So anandamide was found in these clay pots and from the Olmec civilization about 5,000 years ago. So that's how we know that this drink has been being consumed for a very long time. And I feel in my gut it's even longer than 5,000 years. That's just us finding that.
Yes.
Because we see it the same in Samoa and like the Polynesian Islands. We see it in Africa. All these places, there are accounts of cacao, cocoa, whatever you call it. Mm. So it's a very big part of culture. Now, how the Mesoamericans used it, they actually, there's no actually recorded documents that they used it in ceremonial settings like ayahuasca, like peyote, and so on and so on. So there is an appropriation factor. It's like we have to revere that where it comes from. We have to respect the culture it comes from. But as far as an actual like structured ceremony, like let's say ayahuasca would be with a shaman in South America, there's not really, there's nothing. Actually, Keith Wilson, the dude from Guatemala, keeps cacao. He actually coined the term ceremonial cacao because where he lives, it's a very, let's say, spiritual community, and everybody's doing ceremonies, everybody's doing yoga. So he wanted to get people to come on his porch to drink cacao and have these experiences with him, these meditations. So he just said, "Oh, come to my cacao ceremony," and that got people there because he put ceremony attached to it. That's all it is.
Right. Okay.
But physically, cacao, all in all, like, because I can speak forever on this, but cacao, it's a superfood. So at the very least, even if you're in the beginning of your journey, and let's say you're skeptical about the spiritual benefits of it, just having it in your body, if you're a dude who works out, if you're a dude who drinks too much coffee, or you're a tradie or whatever it is, look into cacao because it can give you energy from 3 to 5 hours without crashing. There's no like energy spikes of caffeine. Yep. It tastes really good. There's a lot of iron or magnesium in it. It's also a vasodilator. So it expands your blood vessels in your veins so you can get more oxygen throughout your body. It sends more oxygen to your brain. It sends more oxygen to your heart. So alertness, all these things, this is what cacao is. So at the very least, I always recommend cacao to my athlete clients, my athlete friends, because I'm like, it's going to enhance what you're doing naturally. So yeah, man, I've been really passionate about it because I used it more at first for the spiritual benefits, because I heard people just drinking chocolate and doing meditation. I heard people drinking cacao and doing breath work. And I was like, okay, I'm going to try this as well. And there's a spirit attached to cacao. They just said a cacao spirit. And it's like this nurturing, deep presence that, let's say, it supports you with a deep introspection. And about what's there. It's not very like hard, like let's say ayahuasca would be, or combo or something. It's a very gentle thing. That's why you can drink it daily if you want. Up to, let's say, a ceremonial dose is like about 40 grams, let's say. But you can drink it every single day. It's not invasive in your experience. But yeah, there's so many benefits to it. And this is what I've been doing around the world. I actually enjoy it. Even if I never shared it, I still would drink it because I just like the way it feels in my body.
Yeah, and I love that, man. Thanks, because again, the explanation around both the spiritual and the benefits that come from it, but also your knowledge about the history and where it come from is just super powerful. And again, there's stuff I've learned. We've got some organic cacao in the house, and we've been adding it into. I make a berry smoothie every day, and I add that into the berry smoothie. And so the fact that it's a superfood and it goes in there, and the flavor is just beautiful. Just having that slight chocolatey cacao flavor in amongst all the berries is just, it's awesome.
And for any of you listening to this as well, it's like, also too, the powdered cacao, it's not the stuff I'm talking about. So the cacao that I'm actually talking about, it comes in a block form, in a paste block. So it's not something you can buy from the Servo, or you can buy from Woolies or whatever you guys have out there. Like, this is actually something that you get from collectives. That's how I like to source it. Most of the world's chocolate, 70% of the world's chocolate comes from West Africa. It comes from like Ghana, places like that out there. And a lot of these companies, and that's like where like a lot of like the Hershey's, the big corporations, Cadbury's, they get those type of like chocolate, and there's a big distinction too. A lot of people will see, oh, it says fair trade chocolate. Thing is, there's still a lot of darkness, let's say, in fair trade. There's a lot of like mean things that go down with these collectives. So I always look for cacao sourced from direct trade sources. Let's say in Guatemala, the cacao that I drink, it's literally from collectives of women-owned businesses. It's from family-owned businesses, and it's been generational. So directly dealing with them is how I get this cacao. So you can get the bad cacao, the one that's powder. You can add that to your protein shakes, to your smoothies. However, the cacao that I'm speaking about, just for clarity, this is something that you actually have to seek out to buy. And it's going to be a little bit more money than what you're normally used to spend on chocolate.
Yes.
And honestly, it's worth every single penny. The chocolate that I use, the cacao that I use, is about $50 US a block. And honestly, for what it's done for my life, I feel it should be like 70, 80, $90 because it's that potent and you use a little bit. So I just wanted to put that in there. So this is cool. Not stuff that you get from the shops. Like, you got to seek it out, a brand.
Yeah, no, and fully agree and support that. Absolutely. No, thanks for that clarification, Bam. Absolutely. I know that Seth Slade, a good friend of yours and mine as well, who's also going to be on the podcast. He's found that he has traditions back into Samoa, where his family are actually 2-3 generation cacao growers back from that Samoan place. And so, yeah, once he's connected into that, and we talk a bit about that on the podcast with Seth as well, about, his tradition back into that as well. So, and I think he's now in the process of, through his family, bringing some of that into Australia. So anyone who wants to probably get, some good Samoan cacao, then yeah, definitely jump on and try and connect him with Seth Slade, because I think that you'll be able to get some properly sourced from a family that's doing the right thing as well.
Yeah, if I was in Australia, the two I would go through, it would go through Seth, and then I would also go through my brother Tim Morrison.
Yes.
He gets his cacao from Peru. Peru is very good cacao. It's a little high in caffeine. Like, that's why I like the Guatemalan one, because it's a very small caffeine index. But the Peruvian one's really good as well. So I would, if you're living in Australia right now listening to this, look at Toa Coco with Seth, and then also hit up Tim Morrison on Instagram for his cacao brand as well. They're both really good sources.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm definitely going to be chasing those guys up myself. That's for sure. All right. So Ben, look, your time, again, you're just being extremely generous with the time and having a chat to here today. Just for the guys out there or people out there listening to it, any thoughts of, a little saying or a little thought that they can just think about as they get going to this space of how do I become, more attached to who I am as a person and the inner person I am, and any just a brief thought to finish up on?
Yeah, I just say with all of you listening, this is all a great big uncovering. And we're seeing this with our world today. We're seeing this with cultures. We're seeing this with governments. We're seeing with everything. It's about the great uncovering. And this is a very valuable time to also go through the great uncovering of who we are, and also what stories, what stigmas and stuff we've been living with and we've been allowing with our lives, and what we've allowed with other people to deem us with. So keep uncovering. And the number one medicine you can give to yourself, it's eradicating shame. Once you get rid of shame, like, the sky is the freaking limit in everything.
Excellent. Thanks, Bam. So thank you very much for jumping on board. For those who have probably picked up, Bam is just a very beautiful, calm, relaxed, an amazing dude. I've had a few opportunities to be on sessions where Bam's run some programs or run some breath works, and you just feel the energy and that beautiful, nice, calming vibe that comes through. So, Bam, it's a pleasure to have getting to know you. I'm so honored to have you on my podcast. It means a lot to me. There's a few people that when I first kicked off, I'm like, I wonder if he would love to come on, and you just jumped on and said, yeah, man, just let's hook up and away to go. So, from my heart to your heart, man, it just means so much. So have a beautiful day in Mexico, because I know that's where you are now. And we'll definitely chat again soon. Cheers, man. Love you.
Absolutely, Milvo. Thank you, man. I'll send the bill to your assistant.
No worries. Good done.
Love you, man.
Cheers, man. Love you. Bye. That was Brenden Bam Durell. What an amazing man and an amazing journey that he's been on. As I've said a couple of times, for me it's an absolute privilege to have had him on the show. So that's it for me. As I said, you find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. Have a beautiful day and much love and peace. The Unearthed Men.